everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Selena with Selena Marie LLC, and I love to share all the crafty things here on my channel. If you've been following along for a little while, you might notice the background looks a little bit different. That's because today's video is being recorded out of my new workshop. My husband and I just purchased our first home, and we're now in our new home buyer era, and I can't wait to give you a tour of the workshop later on, so be sure to stick around for that. In today's video, I will be showing you how to sublimate your own mouse pad just like this one. I'll be showing you how to get your design in Silhouette Studio, and I'll also be giving you some tips and tricks when it comes to mouse pads and how to avoid some common mistakes that I've personally done in the past that have really sucked and cost some money. So I want to be sure to share those with you so they don't happen to you too. Now, before we jump in, let's get started with all of the materials you'll need for this project. First, you're going to need some sublimation paper that you're going to print your design onto. You will be doing this using a sublimation printer that uses sublimation ink specifically. If you need more information about sublimation or how to get started with sublimation and more of the basics, be sure to check out this video that I have available, Sublimation 101, and that'll teach you more of the basics about sublimation. You will also need your mouse pad of your choice. So you can do either rectangular mouse pad or circular mouse pads, or honestly this project can be done with anything that is of this like neoprene material here. But I do want to put you guys on to some really awesome blanks that I have personally found from Coastal Business Supplies. They have some of the best mouse pads I have ever found based on the thickness, so just pay mind of that. I don't remember the exact difference in thickness, but these for example are A-sub mouse pads, just rectangular mouse pads, and they're pretty thin. They get the job done, you know. There's also super thick mouse pads, which I personally love, just more of a premium feel to them, and those are from Coastal Business Supplies, which I'll link in the description below. And then you're going to also need some heat gloves, heat transfer tape. I do recommend getting a lint roller because we are going to lint roll our mouse pad to get rid of any debris that can actually sublimate into your mouse pad. Tape measure. You will also need a Teflon sheet. This is going to go on top of your mouse pad when you're pressing to prevent it from scorching or burning, getting too hot. And I also suggest getting some sort of copy paper or butcher paper. So I typically throw this on the press under my blank with the sublimation just to avoid any ink bleeds from getting onto my machine. And lastly, and almost most importantly, you will also need a heat press. I will be using my Heat Press Nation Craft Pro, which is a 15 by 15 space, but you can get one of the smaller ones as well if you're going to do smaller projects like this. But I absolutely love the 15 by 15 space. It's great for lots of different size projects. I do have a 16 by 20 press as well, but I don't pull it out too much. It's only for bigger projects that require a larger paper. But you can also get the smaller heat press as well, and it'll work just as fine. Honestly, your heat press is super important. A lot of people will recommend that you just go with a heat press on Amazon or something, you know, that's budget friendly, which I agree at the beginning. However, if you're serious about sublimation, you're going to need to invest in the right equipment. Sublimation requires the right pressure, the right temperature, and it also requires the right even heat distribution. What happens with a lot of those presses is they have what is called cold spots on them. So the heat is not evenly distributed across the heat plate, and you will get cold spots on things that you press. So you might get like a little lighter spot here that compared to the rest of your design, and that might be what your issue is. The consistency is not really there on those cheaper heat presses. So I personally decided to make the investment, and I purchased my Craft Pro by Heat Press Nation, and I've had it for 2 years now, and it's giving me no issues. I solely use it for my sublimation projects. I have tried on other presses and they'll work. Don't get me wrong, when you get a press, they will work, you know, maybe the first 10, 20 times. I don't honestly know exactly what happens in that time, but for me, that's when I started having issues, was after like the 20th press. I started having really big issues with my sublimation. So just keep that in mind. To each their own with heat presses, but that is the one that I recommend. Now let's go ahead and jump in and get our design ready. So I downloaded a cat like bookish sign from Etsy, and I personally just drag and drop into my Silhouette Studio. You can also file, open, but I just drag and drop. And I'm going to make this into a smaller file to work with since it's super big and heavy on the software at the moment. You do not have to have the business edition. The Silhouette Studio regular edition is free that you can use to print this, but I'm going to work with a more manageable size here. And it's cute how it is, but I honestly would like more of the cats to be showing. So if your file is considered a seamless file, the beauty of it is you're able to copy and paste and add to your file to make it bigger. So then you'll select these two and you want to make sure that they are aligned. So you do want to align the middle of those. And then what I do is I nudge it over with my keys up until it's merged. Because you don't want to over merge it because it can look funky and it'll make it look a little warped if you over merge it there. But you also don't want to miss it because it can create a white line in between your pattern. So I'm just going to take a look here. No seam. So that's good. And I always weld them together in Silhouette Studio, and you can keep it like this and make your mouse pad, but I'm going to do it one more time. And paste, move it down, and then same concept, just making sure they're aligned. And then I'm just going to nudge it up just as we did before. And then I'm going to weld these together. Now you have this super awesome seamless design that you can use for your mouse pad, for tumblers, whatever you would like. But I'm going to go ahead and shrink it down again to a more workable size. And then let's go get our mouse pad size so I can show you how we're going to create our box and crop it to that box. You can honestly print it as is and make it fit your paper and do it like that. But if you want to be sure exactly what pattern you're going to get out of this, I'm going to show you how to crop it to fit your exact mouse pad. So the first thing we are going to do is get the measurements of the mouse pad that we're working with. So you can either do this in inches or millimeters, whatever your preference is. But I'm going to do inches. And I like to leave a little excess. Giving yourself a little extra wiggle room on the outsides of your mouse pad will help, just so you don't have to try to fit it exact. You'll see what I mean here in a second. But based on this, I'm going to do 8 inches and 3/4 wide by, I'll do 7 inches and 1/4. So 8 inches and 3/4 wide by 7 inches and 1/4 tall. And then we're going to do that for the rectangular one. And your circular one, if you're choosing to do that one, similar concept. I'll do 7.5, and it's a perfect circle. So 7.5 by 7.5. Okay, let's go plug those in and get our design. And now that we know the sizes of our mouse pads, we're going to come over here into Silhouette Studio, and I'm going to draw a rectangle to be the size of my mouse pad. So I'm going to do, I said 8 3/4 by 7 1/4. Okay, so 8.75 wide by 7.25 tall. That is my mouse pad. Of course, always measure your own mouse pad. If you're gonna keep using Silhouette Studio, I would recommend copying this for any future mouse pad and just have it in your software for later. And then what you're gonna do is select both of these, come over here to our modify panel, and then I'm gonna hit crop. And that crops your design down to our mouse pad size. And then that's what I'm going to actually print. But before we jump into that, let me show you how to do the circular one. The same concept. I was gonna do 7.5. It's 7.5. And again, just make sure you always measure yours. 7.5. And I'm just going to use the same design. So I'm going to send to backwards, send to back. And then this may not be big enough. So I'm just going to make that a little bit wider so it'll fit my circle. And then I'm going to go over here and align the centers within my software. And then you're going to select those two, and I'm going to hit crop. And just like we did the first one, now we have our circular mouse pad. And now we're going to go ahead and print, and I'm going to make sure I'm set in letter size so my canvas paper here matches what's going to print. Object, rotate clockwise, and then I like to just align it on the paper. And then now we're going to go to File, Print. I will be printing this design with my Epson 7710, which is a converted sublimation printer. And then paper type, premium presentation, paper matte, quality high. Always make sure your image is mirrored and your high speed. If you have this ability to check off the high speed, don't ever print anything high speed with sublimation. Sublimation needs to be able to put as much ink on that paper, as many pixels as it possibly can. And doing high speed will make it skip over some of those sections, so it won't be as filled in, it won't be as bright, it'll look blurry sometimes, things like that. So just make sure high speed is checked off and you mirror your image. I do save these settings for later in your settings just so you don't have to keep going back and forth. Well, but I'm going to go ahead and print this one and then print the circular one, and we'll go grab those off the printer. We have our heat press turned on, and I like to set mine to 385 degrees Fahrenheit for 55 seconds. You can play around with your settings based on the blank that you're using and the heat press that you have. But the range, I would suggest sticking around for anything with sublimation, especially on a flat press. Unless it's super special, I advise sublimation to be anywhere from 360 to 400 degrees with a time of 45 seconds up to 65 seconds. Also, just make sure you're testing. I always recommend test, test, test. Always have one blank set aside for testing. If it's something new, just always make sure you get an extra one because mistakes do happen. I'm here to try to help you avoid those mistakes, but they still happen to me too, so just be prepared for that. Okay, while our press is heating up, let's go ahead and prep our designs on our mouse pads, which I do wait 5 to 10 minutes, or you can throw them under your press as well to allow your sublimation transfers to dry after printing them. You don't want to handle them when they're still wet, so you can smear your ink. If you accidentally touch it, it just can be a mess. So let them completely dry. What I love about this heat press from Heat Press Nation is it does slide out. So I'm gonna slide it out just a little bit to get away from the heat while I work. And I'm going to lint roll all the debris, dust, dirt, all that good stuff off of my mouse pad. And even when I do that, I still like to do what's called a peep check, just to make sure there's no little stragglers. Because if you have a piece of debris on there or dust or something, it's either going to make the ink not sublimate into your mouse pad, or that spot is going to stay in your mouse pad. And if you're selling these, you want the best quality possible, of course. So just make sure you're looking at all of that, and just kind of make sure you can hit it. Make sure there's no dust or debris on your design as well. I like to use my little dust blower. It is broken right now, don't judge me. She's still hanging in there, okay? Put my design down first, and then I'm going to put my mouse pad on top of that, so then I can move it wherever I want it and get it all straight. And as I said earlier, I make mine a little bit big, so I do ensure that all of that white on my mouse pad is completely filled up and nothing is going to get accidentally missed. And then next we're going to take our heat transfer tape. You just got to make sure that you stick it very nicely to that neoprene. And then what I like to do is hit this corner and kind of create a crease and then flatten it. So what I'm doing is I'm putting my tape up against the edge of my mouse pad. You want to be very careful not to let this tape get under your mouse pad. It will lead to a little spot that doesn't press, or a little ghosting spot on this one, because my tape ended up under and prevented the ink from sublimating. Now we're gonna tape the rest down here. Just be very careful. Tape tends to like to slip on this neoprene, so that's why I like to make sure it's up against my mouse pad but not going under it. Make sure you peep check it doesn't go under. Do each of the corners. Being careful to tuck it and making it nice and snug. And I know it seems like a lot of tape, but I personally just like to avoid ghosting because mouse pads tend to slide during the pressing process if it's not taped securely enough, which this neoprene just doesn't like to hold tape. It just is what it is. I'm going to give this temporary adhesive a shot. I have not tested this yet, so we'll see how it goes. You guys are coming along for the ride. I've heard about this so many times with sublimation projects, and it's been recommended to me over and over and over again, but this is the first time I'm finally going to give it a shot. I probably recommend doing this on some cardboard or something so it doesn't get so messy on your press, but I'm going to just put this under so I don't get it all over my press there. And then I'm just going to lightly spray my transfer but I want to make sure I'm far enough away. It says 12 inches from the surface because I do not want to get any speckles on my design. So let's see. This may not work, guys, and it's fine. Kind of lightly spray is probably way too much. The only thing with this is once you put it, you cannot move it, I don't think, because your ink is going to be smudgy. So hopefully I got a good alignment. Okay, I see print on all sides. I'm not going to move it because I'm scared it's going to move. So it's tacky on there. I'm going to just keep it like this until it's ready to press. And I do recommend before you press your design onto your mouse pad, get your pressure right first. So what I usually do is I will take my blank mouse pad before I have put any design onto it first, put it in my press while doing this, but ideally while it's not on. Put this in there and see if you have the correct pressure. So I've already set my pressure. If you don't, then go ahead and adjust it before you press your mouse pad. Because if you have to pull this back up and adjust it and it's super tight, it's probably going to move your mouse pad and cause some ghosting because of that tight pressure. I do a lot of pressure, or I guess you could call it medium pressure for my mouse pads, but I just make sure that it's a good tight fit to ensure that all of that ink is going to adhere nicely to my blank. I'm going to use a sheet of copy paper on the very bottom of my press, and we're gonna start with our rectangular mouse pad. Before I put it down, I always do a little peep check and make sure none of your tape has gone under, come off, because you don't want it sliding while you're putting it down. Now gently handle it and put it down. Teflon sheet, and then we're gonna press this at 385 for 55 seconds. Make sure you got your heat gloves on standby. Now let's go ahead and press it at 385 degrees Fahrenheit for 55 seconds. It's going to be hot. Okay, here's my Teflon, and when I get a good reveal, I don't want it to like fall off, because it will. Hold on, hold on. Okay, the tape did not go under, I promise. It's just when I picked it up. And I'm analyzing it, guys. I'm looking for any ghosting, anything like that. The tape is really just the tricky part. Just keeping an eye on that tape just to make sure it doesn't end up under. And why I say not to mess with it once you've already put the press down is because once there's heat adhered to that tape, it gets very, very flimsy and not very sticky anymore with these mouse pads. So you just get a lot of ghosting that way. Don't want this to happen to your mouse pad. Now let's give our circular mouse pad a shot with the adhesive spray. Oh, I'm nervous about this one. I've never done this one before. Okay, so I'm gonna put it down carefully. Just trying to make sure that nothing is sliding. It still feels pretty tacky. And this one is a little bit of a thicker mouse pad and a different blank, so it might vary in vibrancy and things like that. But I'm gonna lower my pressure just a little bit, like half a turn. So now let's go ahead and press this one for 55 seconds at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. That was too much pressure. I should have loosened it more, but I would rather have closed it than trying to lift it up again, because I could have made my mouse pad slide in that process. Luckily, it was able to close. That's why I suggest always pre-pressing your mouse pad in your press before you even turn it on, just to get your pressure correct before you have to mess with it while the design is on there. And that one's gonna be tough. Okay, now we're gonna see, because I've never used this adhesive spray before. I'm nervous. I'm so nervous. Okay. I'm not ready. Guys, I don't know. I may never use heat transfer tape again. That was pretty cool. That might be my way to do mouse pads from now on, is with the adhesive spray. I don't see much of a difference. There might be a little bit difference in this one having a bit more of a better press because of the heat transfer tape. Maybe it makes it more close together on the design and less space between the blank and the design. But overall, they look very, very close. Let me know what you think. Which method would you do? Would you do the heat transfer tape, or are you going to give the adhesive spray a try? Thank you all so much for watching. I hope today's video helps you make your own custom sublimated mouse pad. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to like it and subscribe for future videos. I'll be sure to link everything in the description below for you guys, and if you have any questions, please be sure to leave them in the comments. I can't wait to see you next time. Until then, happy crafting.